Mandalorian Season 2, Episode 1. I had a few questions from the first season leading into this one. First question. Are the Mandalorians still going to be kind of cheesy? I like their whole Creed thing. I like where they hang out. But all of them wearing the same armor and sort of living in the sewers and constantly saying in a really deadpan way, "This is the way. This is the way. This is the way," was a little bit cheesy, a little bit campy, especially for people trying to be so serious. Are there going to be more Yoda mysteries? Are we going to figure some of this out? Is it a Yoda? Obviously not. Wouldn't just be a Yoda. There's a Yoda and a Yaddle from the other Star Wars, the horrible prequels. Will Gina Carano, I think her name is, improve her acting? I didn't like her performances for the most part in the first season. She does that thing a lot of new people do in their acting, where they smile constantly. They're like, "I'm hurt." Look for the little smile. She always does. And, I mean, this is something like, are we going to get more of this amazing music? And as you can hear from the music we have in the background, it's damn good. This is probably like the first time that I've heard really interesting original Star Wars music that isn't just like a rip-off of Star Wars. I mean, I've heard lots and lots of Star Wars video games that are very derivative of what John Williams is doing, but this is one of the first times I've heard it where they've actually gone and done something original that actually fits really, really, really well. It's a real joy. Some of the like more triumphant parts are kind of campy and cheesy, but I think it plays in a bit to this feeling of more like an old cowboy show you might see on TV many decades ago. This episode starts off, we're seeing this new environment that's really grimy, really gritty. I think it nails that grime and grit that A New Hope had and hinted at with Mos Eisley and all these sort of dirty, scummy places. But it does it in a new way. I was really impressed. We see this Twi'lek that isn't just a babe girl. I thought the Gamorreans in the fighting ring looked pretty good, and then the axe effects looked a little bit cheesy, but that was fine. And I was thinking, like, this guy's gonna chop each other? We're gonna do something super bloody and super, no, they're not. But it was a good fight. It was a good setting of the scene. That first alien that he talks to, the sort of the gangster guy that double crosses him, he's got that big one eye and a super unibrow. I liked his outfit. I liked his makeup. And as they were talking, they were like doing such a good job of building up the stakes. I was wondering, is Yoda thingy gonna have to interfere? He ends up getting double-crossed for his armor. So they're setting the stage of how important that armor is, which is going to be a big theme throughout this whole episode. There's so much good writing in this episode. It's not super flashy. It doesn't need to be super flashy, even though at times it is. But they just do so many smart things. Like, you should watch this. You could show this to a class and say, this is how you should build a script and build a story where things are introduced that have a payoff, where you have some stakes and you make it seem like your character's in trouble, and then you have an interesting way of them getting out, and then you raise the stakes a little further, and then you have an interesting way of them getting out. If your character feels like he's in danger, then it's more satisfying when they come back and they triumphantly win. If they just very easily cut through everything, like think of in episode 1 of the prequels, when Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon get in any trouble, they just like so effortlessly chop people down. You see that in episode 3 too, when Anakin and Obi-Wan land. It's nothing. It's way more scary in the beginning of New Hope when you see all these sort of civilian type guys with their little bicycle helmets on and they're fighting the stormtroopers and they're losing. So it makes it more satisfying when they do get away, or when C-3PO and R2-D2 just barely escape and they're the only ones that do, and everyone else is, you see them held prisoner. Anyway, that's what A New Hope did right, and that's what this episode and this series has been doing so well. I really enjoyed that first standoff. It was a pretty fun little fight scene. There was like some really cool delayed, guitar, synth, and music. I thought that was great. It was nice to see him get hit a few times as he's scrapping with them. That, again, builds the stakes and builds the tension. I really get the feeling like he was kind of in over his head, and then to see him strike back worked really well. When he chases him down, all of a sudden this gangster goes from being sort of like a guy who, in the just like the snap of a finger, can have that whole illegal fighting ring just totally cleared out and take on this Mandalorian, and then you see him tied upside down and he ends up just being like prey. And it's done in a really natural way and a really satisfying way. He shot out the lights and all those red eyes appeared. That was like a little bit silly, but that was interesting. And it was something new. Now they were going back to Tatooine, and I thought, why? Is there a reason they're going back here? It seems like they have all these other places to go. I guess it's a sand planet, and it would turn out later you would see why they were doing that. And this is where we heard that triumphant theme music, which I thought, it's not really great unless they're kind of going for something cheesy, but I do love all the other music, just not so much that. Ana Sedaris is back. She's always really funny. Some of the little robot hijinks and stuff I think was good for kids or, I don't know, simple people. But then you think, like, is this a kid show? It's a pretty serious show. And you think, Baby Yoda? All right. The jokes end up getting kind of thin in this section, but I think it does an okay job of sort of balancing out the first darkness of that opening section. He has to head out to this Mos Vespa place. You have this mystery of it not being on the map, and it's probably dangerous. And now he's got to approach by speeder or horse. Now they pan the camera across and you see these banthas. We've seen tons of bantha establishing shots on Tatooine. And then the pan keeps going and you end up seeing the sand people. And he's hanging out with them. He's talking with the like hand language, sign language, sand language. It's nice world building. And at the time when I saw it, I just thought, oh, this is great. Little world building. Little did I not know that this would be the whole episode and would be built so bloody well. So he ends up getting Mos Vespa. And I'm wondering, as I'm watching this, they are going like full on cowboy episode. And one of my friends, Grace, told me that the bartender in this scene and the sheriff that comes in, they play a bartender and a sheriff in Deadwood. Because at one point, I mean, it goes up to a bar. A sheriff comes in, casual standoff. They bring a drink over. And when they're walking, you actually hear like spurs sounds. They're just going full cowboy with it, like really kind of laying into it. I think they have a lot of confidence with how well season 1 went. Now they're having a bit more fun with it. And then you set the stakes again of this like Mandalorian armor. He really, really wants this armor. And at first I thought it was a girl just from his frame, but it ends up being this guy who I thought, oh, wait a second, how cool would it be? Because we end up seeing this like sandworm type thing later on, which is a great dragon. How cool would it have been if it was Kevin Bacon? Bringing the Tremors stuff back to get out some nice little Tremors jokes. But I think it worked out because later on the sheriff, you saw that he's very, he has a much better way of being vulnerable than I think Kevin Bacon would be. Kevin Bacon's just kind of too cool initially. He's sort of has like a constantly on charisma and presence about him. But I think that the guy they do have, who's not Kevin Bacon, I think he was a really good choice for it. New Star Wars drink, some blue booze. They're having a showdown. It's building. It's very nice. Nice tension. All of a sudden, this rumbling hits. More mystery. And I'm thinking, the show is so bloody good. I'm so into this. And I'm thinking, right when I see that, because I saw that the places were on some stilts, I thought, oh, it must be like a sandworm of some kind. And as the sandworm comes through, you see these houses on the stilts, eats a bantha. We know that the banthas are big. They established how big a bantha was, sitting next to the sand people and him when he was on the bike earlier. It's a great way of setting the stakes, telling people what's going on. And banthas are something you can kind of feel empathy towards because they're big and they're furry and they have like those big lips and eyes and they look sort of like a big dog, right? So he ends up having this deal, right, to help this guy kill the sandworm for that armor. That's the part where I thought, why don't you just kill this guy? It'd be like a lot easier. You probably could have easily killed him. But I guess he's a good guy, so that's why he would do that. They end up showing the Death Star blowing up, and I was surprised they didn't like retcon that to show how the pieces would end up on that planet fairly intact in Episode 9, but I think they went the fan service away and they went, we'll just show them exactly how that happened in Return of the Jedi. Pretend Episode 9 never happened. They show that how this place came to be in trouble, where the mining dickheads come in right away as soon as the Death Stars exploded. I thought they had a cool design. Sort of rough and tumble, ugly armor. They're like very easy to hate. Little details in the flashback where they show the relationship from the bartender and the sheriff. And as the guy who's not Kevin Bacon is running away from these mining guys coming through and he's trying to escape with his life, he jumps off the platform and he falls, which is just a little touch of, yeah, you could make it so he looks cooler, like running and heroically jumping, but this displays much more of the problem at hand and how dangerous these guys are to our character. And what it does is it makes it so much more satisfying when he ends up meeting up with the Jawas, like C-3PO and R2 in the desert, and he's got those crystals, which is, the crystals are kind of like a convenient little MacGuffin that happened to be there. But when he comes back with the Mandalorian armor and he takes these guys out, then it just makes it so much more satisfying that you can just tell these guys understand how do you set something, how do you set those stakes, how do you keep those stakes rising. So we learn the backstory. Of these guys real quick, very effective, and it's actually a crate dragon. It's not a sandworm from Tremors. We've heard the phrase crate dragon so often. We've seen their bones in the desert in various ways. So that's a really cool thing to bring back. And the interesting thing about that is you're not just bringing back some character or something that is just pure nostalgia fan service that is just going to be worse than what it was in the original, like in, say, Rogue One, when they bring back the guys from the bar. I'm wanted in 12 systems, I have the death penalty. That guy sounds really dangerous, doesn't he? Bringing like back a crappier version of him in Rogue One, where actually this, you're bringing back something that was in the past, but actually making it better. And that's what this show has been doing so bloody well. I thought it was so cool how they teamed up with the Sand People. It made a lot of sense that the villagers would have problems with the Sand People. And there was a book called The Tales from Mos Eisley Cantina, and they go over that, where there's a time when like sort of the moisture farmers are actually going to be working with the Sand People, but people are really upset. They've probably been at war for a long time. The Sand People can be a little more brutal. I'm sure all it takes is one misunderstanding, your family gets murdered or something. Even if you just come to arms, it's not going to feel good. You're going to hate them forever, right? Someone kills your mom. So you can understand why they would be up against each other. And that's the friggin' wonderful thing about it, is that they have all this tension already built in. They hate each other, and they show many ways of why they would be against each other, but they have this now common goal of survival against this crate dragon. Now we see that the Sand People show they've been using their sort of natural knowledge of the land to learn this thing's digestive cycle and make it sleep a lot longer by offering these sacrifices. And I'm thinking, who's going to do that job? So they have this huge shot, this gigantic cave, and it's like little small bantha and the guy who has to lure it in. And I love that he puts it down, and then he goes, and as they're both running off, you get this beautiful shot of this crate dragon coming out, and bam, doesn't go for the bantha, gets the sand person. So what they've done is they've set an expectation that this is pretty dangerous and unpredictable, where even their plan of giving it banthas is still like a 50-50 chance of whether they're going to lose a person every time they go do it. And it also kind of gives you this idea that the Sand People are a proud and courageous sort of people. Sort of like, I mean, would humans want to do that? I don't know. I mean, maybe if they really, really had to, but I think they'd probably just throw rocks at a horse and try to scare the horse towards the cave instead. I like this about the story setup and how it's just sort of like a simple monster of the week. It builds in the world, uses the old ideas we've seen in these new ways, tension, stakes. They make the monsters seem way more dangerous than they can handle on their own, and then they come up with ideas to sort of get stronger, but now they got to convince the villagers. Now that's sort of like a new thing, and that's where you see the Sand People and the humans not wanting to get along, but having to. You see when they're like passing the explosives back and forth, Sand People drop it. It's kind of a mistake, but it could be a problem. And the humans thinking, these guys don't understand this. If they can't even understand the explosives, we're going to have a big problem later on. Like, it's just so well done. Man, this encounter with the Great Dragon. I was wondering why at the end of the show, it goes from this wide screen, this like full screen, how it shrinks down to sort of a widescreen to exit. And I thought, that's weird. Are they just trying to make it more cinematic? I didn't even clue in. And then my friends, Grace and Dave, told me that's because they used IMAX cameras for that shot when they first go and encounter the dragon. It goes from the regular ratio to boom, filling up the whole screen. So as you're seeing something gigantic and the scale of it, it's getting even bigger than you were looking at this whole time now that your eyes are used to this ratio. It's like such a genius use of that. And then just to elevate the whole last piece of the show, the third act, the exciting climactic part, and have that, and then have it as he's exiting, walk off to the sunset, bring it down, I think was just so smartly done. I loved when that dragon first comes out, Sand People are running away from it. It's sort of like Jaws, just this big mouth coming towards, but way bigger. And you see that their weapons are so ineffectual. They're holding onto these ropes, and you think, of course, that's not going to work. And it starts retreating, ruining their plan. It knows that they've got these explosives set up, and they all have to work together to get it back out. It starts vomiting that green stuff. They didn't really make it clear whether that was acid or what that was. I mean, it was effective, but I would have liked to hear, if you want it to be acid, make sort of a hissing sound or have a reaction shot, but I think it worked for what it was. The thing ends up way high in a mountain. It's outsmarted them. Now it's time for some Mandalorian rocket pack flying around, which I think works pretty well, because it's not just that they can fly anywhere. There's kind of a sense of when they're flying that it's a little bit rickety, like it's a little bit more unpredictable. It's not like you're just flying a ship up there, or whatever powers a ship's engines. It's this more like physical kind of visceral propulsion that just gives it a bit more of a danger. There's a part after when Boba's flying around. He's not Boba. Mando's flying around and shooting at it, and there's no effect to it. And the show understands that tension you can get from just a dust cloud can be as exciting as anything else. So just showing dust and then wondering where this thing is going to appear or what happened to it ends up being really, really exciting. And it just is another lesson that you don't always need to have the screen filled with dozens and hundreds of CGI objects flying around and having all this craziness. You just need one dust cloud that has the context to make you think. And that creates tension so much better than just mindlessly throwing objects at the screen. When they're looking for a new way to take down this crate dragon, they see the bantha. Well, you see the bantha's covered in explosives, and I thought, it's going to be like Jaws. Get him to swallow the bantha, detonate it. But what happens is old Mando gets swallowed. I did not expect that at all. Then he ends up the thing goes down, he flies out of the mouth and detonates it. It looks really awesome. It's a bit silly, like, how does he get out? What was he doing? What was that blue electricity? I thought it was a little bit silly, but it didn't really detract from enjoying the moment as it was intended. I thought it was a pretty good finale, pretty exciting, sort of heroic. Kind of fits in with the campy style that they've been putting out for the show, this episode especially, and the shows before it. I like how the Sand People are harvesting it like an indigenous people would. It makes sense that they made that great agreement where they said, if you allow the Sand People to harvest this thing completely, then they will have a truce, a peace treaty. They won't attack you at all unless provoked, which I think is another really interesting, totally logical, makes sense that they wouldn't just be like, we'll have peace forever. It's just, we'll have peace for now. We won't attack you unless you attack us. Totally realistic. We see this new villain at the end. He sees him flying away. I thought, another monster for another week? He seemed to have interesting weapons. He was bald, scowling, had a scar. And then my friends Dave and Grace brought up that might be Boba Fett. Now I'm thinking Boba Fett probably would be bald and would be scarred. And Boba Fett was last seen on Tatooine in a Sarlacc pit. And they said the Krayt Dragon was in a Sarlacc pit because it ate the Sarlacc. So maybe that's how he got out. It ate the Sarlacc, and the Sarlacc expelled them all. In that Tales from the Mos Eisley Cantina, they actually have a chapter on Boba Fett where he ends up getting out. He sort of survives with that Mandalorian armor. And then maybe the Mandalorian armor he had ended up with the sheriff. Well, that's hence why it looks so scored and screwed up. Maybe he's been looking for it. Now he sees this new Mandalorian with it. So now he's going off to get it. Maybe they'll team up. Maybe he'll sacrifice himself. I don't know. Just having a Boba Fett movie seemed like kind of a cheesy, iffy idea. What they did with this was a lot better. How they're going now, I have total faith in how they'll bring him back, and I think that they're going to. I think they're going to treat it with a lot of respect, and they're going to be pretty smart about it. So far, they really haven't let me down in terms of writing, and it seems like they have learned a big lesson from the sequel trilogy that they need to have a plan going into it. I know, what a lesson to learn. What a lesson to need to learn. But they did, and it seems like they have learned it. I've really been gushing about this episode. It's just so nice to see good Star Wars again. And to do, like I said, going back, taking what made the original Star Wars interesting. One facet of that. Actually, most of it. Because I was going to say not doing most of the space magic Jedi stuff, but they still have little Yoda. Gets involved sometimes, and it's pretty exciting. But focusing more on sort of the gritty day-to-day life, which I think was one of the most interesting parts about the original Star Wars, was Mos Eisley Cantina, and like, what did Luke do, and why would you... That makes sense. They would be moisture farmers in a desert. Why not? And sand people and Jawas and all this stuff, and just exploring all that stuff in between, that gritty stuff, that sort of 80s, late 70s sci-fi that Alien started, the gritty lived-in world. I think they're doing such a good job of taking that, almost adding like a bit of a cyberpunk flair like we saw earlier on, having it feel like a Western. It's just so brilliant. From top to bottom. Like I said, in the first season, there was one episode I didn't like, and there was another episode in The Village, which I thought was just okay. But, and as you can see from, say, the first season, there's obviously different variations in their budget. They had like that Bill Burr episode with all the bounty hunters, and they're all hanging out in just a couple hallways, and they're smart. They say, okay, we'll have a couple actors, put them in makeup, have them be in one costume the whole time. We're going to go to some ship that's basically deserted. You can get a lot of mileage out of that, and then you can save that money and you can put it into other episodes that need to have a TIE fighter flying around, or a lot more extras, or stuff that's a lot bigger, like this crate dragon. I'm assuming later on in the season, maybe the next episode or episodes 4 and 5 is probably where there's going to be a bit of a dip, and then it's going to rise up again. But that's fine. That's kind of the reality of putting some on TV and having to put out 8 episodes of something or 10 episodes of something and still have it maintain sort of an integrity. But they've done it really well. This is exactly what Star Wars needed. This is what a Mandalorian series should have been. And the great thing about it is it's sort of, you didn't really know you wanted it until you got it. And they did it. So I'm going to go watch episode 2, and then I'll have a review up of that one. Let me know what you thought. Or don't.